Hi there, and thank you for tuning in. I am Shauna K. Lester, the founder of Memorable Essay and the creator of the IMG Residency Match Application Accelerator. What I do is that I help ambitious IMGs create match applications that stand out. So, really, match applications that are memorable, residency applications that are memorable, so that you can match and get into the residency that you want to get into and to go on really and have the medical career of your dreams. So we are going to be talking today about ways that you can avoid having to reapply to the match. This is very important, and I thought it was pretty topical because Match Day just went by, and I've been loving getting all of these wonderful messages from my clients for Match 2020 who were successful in the match, and so now we're gearing up for Match 2021, and we're going to talk about all of the ways that you can avoid having to reapply. So grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, or get your phone and take notes, because this stuff is really, really important, and it can save you tons of time and thousands of dollars, and for some people actually just never matching at all, right? Because there are years when everything is just a perfect storm for you to match, and you do not want to miss that window. So the first step that we have, and I have some notes here myself because this is a lot to cover, the first one that I have is not having a strategy, right? Not having a strategy can be a highway to having to reapply to the match. Well, in a sense, because you probably don't know what you're doing, but I think most people normally kind of figure it out as they go along the way. But not having a strategy in terms of not knowing what are the things that you can make work for you, and what are the things that you're going to have to somewhat compensate for them throughout your process and with your application. And this is really important because there are no two applicants to the match who are alike. So even people who you went to the same medical school with, took all the same classes with, sat beside them in class, maybe even have similar scores to them, everyone is applying. I mean, unless you apply as a couple, everyone's applying to the match really as an individual off of your individual strength. And so not having a strategy that's based on your particular nuanced situation in terms of all the things that you have going in your favor and all of the things that are not going in your favor is a surefire way to have to reapply to the match, because your strategy needs to be built around who you are, right? So you want to start with knowing what strategy is right for you and getting that strategy in place, and then following that strategy. So if you need to apply to 2-3 programs, to take an extra step, to make a certain connection, all of those things, you need to figure them out. You need to have them in place, right? So that you don't find yourself having to reapply because last year you just would not ever add another specialty because you were so above that. All right? So you want to focus on getting that strategy in place. Number 2, which is a really good one because it is so common. It's not something that I judge, but it is unusually common. And that is testing before you are ready. And we're judging readiness based on the scores that you're getting in your practice test, or just having lots of crazy things happening in your personal life at the same time when you are preparing for your step exam, right? And based on just all of those crazy things, sometimes very intense and personal things like breakups or death of a family member, you're trying to push through, but your head just really is not in it, because your head can't be in it because you're so distracted, right? But you say to yourself, okay, I'm already registered. I don't want to change the date again. I don't want to lose this money. I'm going to have to take this test. And then you just test and you have a failed step attempt. And the thing with that is that once you have that step failure on your record, it's something that you cannot scrub from your record, right? You can't take it away from your record, and that there are just some programs who are going to filter you out based on that going forward in the future, right? So one of the surefire ways to avoid reapplying to the match is testing when you objectively know that you're ready. So I know that there are some people who will always sort of be, borderline. You've been studying for months. Sometimes it's really high. Sometimes it's kind of in the middle. It's not what you want, So it doesn't have to be that, okay, I'm getting 250s on every practice test and that's the only time I'm going to test. Sure, you can go for, whatever the median score is for your specialty on that particular step and decide that you are going to take it. But if you are consistently getting failing scores leading up to an exam, or if you are crying yourself to sleep, or if you have no time to sleep or shower because of everything else that's going on, you want to pay attention to that and know that by not testing, you're going to avoid having to reapply to the match, because the message is objectively clear, right? You might have a lot of emotions attached to it because you're registered, because you've been studying, because you already spent, but testing, although you are not ready, is a surefire way to have to reapply to the match. And for now, for step one, that's especially crucial, right? Because you're just basically Xing out programs that would have otherwise given you a shot. They're now going to have to filter you out. Another surefire way to have to reapply to the match, so we're talking about how to avoid, reapplying to the match, is to understand the importance of your personal statement in your match application. You don't want to be one of those persons who thinks that once you have some half decent step scores, or you've checked all the boxes, you're going to be fine. And this is something that you can leave till the last minute. It's something that you can blow off because it is just not as important as your scores. And so you end up producing something that is mediocre. This is a surefire way. And for some people, actually, it has happened. Like, you will have great scores and you still blow that off and you still won't match. This is a really funny story that has happened to some people who will talk with my clients or compare themselves to people who either they work with me or somebody else and get professional help, and they compare how they get such few interviews to these people with bad scores, and they don't realize it's because they have not put any time or effort into their written application, especially into the personal statement. So you need to understand the importance of your personal statement, and you need to give it the time that it is due, all right? Because blowing off your personal statement or creating one of those epistle type personal statements, like 1,200 words, 1,000 words, it's just going on and on, saying things that nobody really cares about, that's a surefire way to have to reapply to the match, right? So our fourth step is underselling yourself in your CV. The fourth way that you'll have to reapply to the match, you want to avoid doing that by selling yourself appropriately in your CV. One of the issues, especially because I work with a lot of FMGs, one of the issues that I come across a lot is that people either have not actually touched their CV in a very long time. Like, it's just something that they got into medical school, they have not touched it until that time. That's oftentimes the issue. So it's like they need to give the CV CPR, right? You need to bring that CV back from the dead because it's been so long since you've actually touched that CV. That's one of the main issues, right? And so that's actually a lot more ground to cover than people realize. Sort of going back and figuring out what are all of those things that you've done, the major things, but maybe also the things that weren't that major, but they're important, or they could become a very interesting talking point during your residency interview. To have to go back now and bring that thing from the dead takes so much work. So one of the things that I actually encourage people to do where that is concerned is to keep a running list of your achievements. What are the things you're doing? What are you achieving? Who are you working with? So when it's time for you to put together your CV, you can just go back to that document sort of as your base or as like a master document and work it into your CV, right? Because underselling yourself on your CV is definitely it's a huge lost opportunity, and you do not want that to be you, right? The other thing and the other way of, a surefire way of having to reapply to the match is producing a CV that just basically makes you look like you do not care. So very basic things like horrible misspellings on your CV, not allowed. I'm not talking like people who are coming from a British system, so you have an A there in Caesarean or in Pediatric. Or I'm not talking about that sort of thing. I'm talking about things that are just wrong. They just make you look lazy, like you have not spent the time. Well, first of all, that your communication is questionable, which is a whole other problem. In terms of your ability to communicate, that could just be the problem. Or also that you have not spent enough time on the CV, which just says that you don't care, right? And if you don't care about how you present yourself, why should somebody care about helping you match? So You want to take care of those things, those very obvious errors, like changing formatting from one section to the next. So in your volunteer section, your dates are over here, in research they're over here on the right. And I know that with ARIS you're gonna have a template, right? So once you do go ahead, for those of you applying to Match 2021, you get your token, you open your application, you're going to be using a form, like a template that ARIS has, to make sure that the CV comes out in a certain way. But you want to have a standalone CV, and that CV, like one that's just a Word doc that you can print and carry with you. And that CV needs to have proper formatting, because anything else says that you don't care. And as I said, if you don't care, I don't know why people should care to invite you to an interview. So if you want to avoid reapplying to the match, you need to get yourself a polished CV that's in order, that communicates to people that you care about how you present yourself, which therefore also communicates that you just care about the quality of work that you do in general. The fifth way to avoid reapplying to the match, or having to reapply to the match, is to apply on time. Late applications to the match, when you do that, you're basically just trying your luck. It's not to say that it's impossible that you will match. If you submit after September 15, if you submit in early October, it's not impossible that you will match. You are just making things unnecessarily hard for yourself. And the odds are that you will have to reapply. If you are one of those persons who you're coming in with no connections, you're coming in with pretty average scores or below average scores, or with a profile with any sort of red flag at all, and you give yourself the extra disadvantage of missing some invitations that are sent out, that is how you know you are going to have to reapply to the match. So you want to plan that as soon as that application portal is open, that you can go in, you can prepare your application, and you can submit it. All right. Applying late to the match, these late October, November applications, especially for people who you're not really exceptional with someone catching your eye, that's a surefire way that you're going to have to reapply to the match. The other way, which is our sixth point, for those of you who are keeping notes, is sitting back once you've submitted your application, right? As an IMG, especially as an FMG, and again, if you're somebody with any red flags at all, sitting back once you have submitted this application. Now, throughout the entire residency process, until you get that congratulations email in your inbox in March, you have an additional job in life. You have an additional hat, and that job is called being a sales advocate. You are somebody who you have a vision for your life, and you are going to push as much as possible to make sure that that happens for you, because it is what you want. Therefore, submitting your application and leaning back, again if you're average, again if you have red flags, is not the way forward. It's a surefire way of having to reapply to the match. Don't discount the various ways that you can continue to advocate for yourself after applying to the match. Like, you don't want to be a pest or be rude or be abusive, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing things like reaching out to colleagues who are in programs, reaching out to the actual program coordinators themselves, pulling all of the strings that you can pull based on relationships that you've developed prior to this application journey starting, because you don't want to submit and lean back. You don't even want to interview and lean back, right? You always want to be following up, pushing, in a mannerable way, in a respectful way, earnestly putting forward your agenda. That's what you want to be doing. So unless you're, off the charts with those 250s and 260s, as I'm saying, and connections here and there, do not submit your application and then lean back. Surefire way to have to reapply. And the last one in the process, which comes later in the year for people who get interviews, is going to interviews without professional interview preparation, although you know that you are bad at interviews. Now, there are some people, because as I said before, in step one, your strategy depends on who you are. So your application strategy depends on who you are, what are your strengths and weaknesses, what you need to be doing. If you are somebody who you have gotten, and I had clients like these, not from Match 2020, but from Match 2019, I remember specifically, there were about 2 clients. One of them was an AMG who had gotten 10 interviews in the match process the year before and had not matched. If you get 10 interviews, especially as an AMG, and you do not match, that is how you know that you are saying something wrong out of your mouth when you sit there. There is no way that 10 programs are going to ask to see you, to have an exchange, just to confirm that there is some value that you can add to their program. And then, sure, something can be off with your rank order list, but the odds of you not matching with 10 interviews as an AMG, like, something is wrong, right? So if you know that you are somebody based on not matching the year before, or based on the fact that you generally just do not interview well, you do not put forward your agenda very well, you know you don't interview well and you don't get professional interview prep, you are begging to reapply. If you interview well, this is not for you. If you know that you generally do not speak well about yourself, or that your messaging and what you have to say about yourself sounds like what everybody else has to say, you will have to reapply until you sit and you figure out what is required of you in an interview, until you practice with someone who can give you feedback, how to say those things in a way that the persons who are listening will receive it in a good way, and will receive it in a way that says that you have value to add to their program. You are begging to reapply. All right, so those are our 7 things, and as I said, I wanted to jump on and to talk about that, especially now that we're in match season. People are about to find out on Friday, where they matched, and it's just such a beautiful process to see people come full circle. But I also know that it can be very emotionally difficult, not just for you, the applicant, but also for your family, for people who've been supporting you when you don't match, right? Because this is yours, more than anybody else. These are your years of investment since high school, for those people who go through college. If you're in a Caribbean med school, then, going to medical school, all the money, all the time. And then there are just very simple things sometimes that you could tweak, that you could have tweaked to make sure that you had the best possible odds of matching to match, and you didn't do them, right? Because you didn't know. So in order to avoid reapplying to the match, have a strategy that is tailored to you, just to you, not your best friend who you wish that you were more like, but a profile that works, a strategy that works on your behalf, on behalf of your profile, making sure that you only test when you're ready, even if you're already registered, even if the ticket is already booked. Get help, get testing help, get a tutor, drive that score up, or just allow yourself, if you're having an emotional meltdown because of personal things that are happening, allow that stuff to pass and test when you're ready. Understand the importance of your personal statement and act accordingly in terms of what you produce. Sell yourself as well as you can on your CV, because that's going to be really important. Apply early to the match, not on time. Apply early to the match. Aim to be early with every aspect of your application, so that in the worst case scenario, you are on time for September 15 or whenever. Avoid applying late to the match, especially if you have red flags in your application. Avoid applying late to the match, right? And then number 6, you want to make sure that you advocate for yourself even after you've submitted your application, even after you have interviews. That process never stops until you get the email in your inbox that says you're not eligible for soap, right? And then you also want to make sure that you get professional interview preparation. I think everyone should get professional interview preparation, that everyone should train to be as sharp as possible, especially when it comes to their messaging. But this is especially relevant for people who mumble and fumble and stumble through interviews, or people who have red flags to explain. You have to have messaging for responding to those low medical school scores, that step failure, the clinical exposure that you have versus what you're saying you want to match into. If that's a problem for you, if expressing yourself is a problem for you, or if you have a lot to explain, go ahead and get professional interview prep. All right, so there is a link below for persons who are applying to Match 2021. If you're looking for professional one-on-one premium support with your match process, I would love to meet you. We have something that's opening up pretty soon that has been really great with the first batch of individuals who are doing it, and we're going to talk some more about that. But as much as possible, you want to avoid having to reapply to the match. And so if that's you, if that's your intention to match on your first try, or if you're a real applicant and you want your next try to be the last try, I'd love to meet you. All right, take care and stay inside as much as you can during this time. All right, bye.